This is part 2 of the second module in this Great Awakening crash course. Now it's time to pierce the veil. See who's behind it. In the last video, we talked about the veil of this reality, which is actually what's separating us here in third density or third dimension with the other dimensions or densities of consciousness itself. So this is part of our reality, and there's a reason for that. That is to have a individualized experience here without access to the true reality of who we are. It's almost like a game that we come here to play, forgetting who we truly are. This actually makes a lot of sense if you think about your past lives. A lot of people want to know if they were this or that in past lives, and while it's fun, you can think about knowing your past lives as something that is a burden for yourself. Even if you just do regressions, which I have nothing against, but if you think about just knowing all the things that you did in the past life and know that you were that person just can hinder you here. So it's actually a good thing that every time we do an incarnation here in third density, we're wiped out of everything that we know, because we don't have the capacity of understanding the reason why those past lives were the way they were. Our higher self does, but that's just to explain the necessity of having this veil here. Also, in a very minimal example, there are other reasons why we have this veil, which we don't need to talk about, but just to give you an idea of why we come here. A lot of people like to ask, why I'm here, why do I don't remember, why do I don't have my full powers, or my full conscious being, etc., etc. So that's just part of it. Now, what's behind the veil is other densities of consciousness. In the Law of One, we talked about them. 4th density, 5th density, 6th density, and 7th density. We live within the octave of realities and densities of consciousness, if you will, by which we evolve over time. Time being something that I call spiritual time and not linear time as we know it, or space-time, time itself. It's actually spiritual time, which is just the evolution of the soul through the densities of consciousness and back into oneness. You can see this progression, if you will, as the octahedron. An octahedron having a point at the bottom and a point at the top, which is unity. And in the middle, there are 4 points, which is just the division of the self into manifestation of different individualized portions of itself, and then going back to unity. So that's basically how we progress through the densities of consciousness. But we're not here to talk about the beginning or the end. We're talking about the sandwich in the middle, which is those who are in third density, which we know are here, us together in this planet. There are other planets that have their own third density experience or illusion, as Ra likes to call them in the Law of One. And there is then the 4th, 5th, and 6th density. Now, we don't need to know and explain too much about these densities. All we need to know is that these densities exist, and they also harbor life or entities in different bodies that have in the densities of their respective densities. So 4th density is known as the density of love and understanding. We can see that now because we are at that threshold, if you will, in this transition that we're going through on planet Earth, going into a higher consciousness, which is based on love and understanding. So in 4th density, we actually get to know and understand more the loving nature of this universe and the cosmos itself. And we go away from the separation of beingness. We also start working together and being more of a unified consciousness. We start working towards that unified consciousness that we all achieve once we get into 5th density consciousness, which is the next level. There are times for this. There are cycles just like we have here. And speaking of cycles, we're ending the last cycle of third density, and that's why we're heading into 4th density. So 4th density has a lot of beings, a lot of entities. And then there is 5th density consciousness, where social memory complexes, which are terms that are particular to the Law of One, but just to give an idea here, is the unification of the entities within a planetary system or civilization or a group that achieve that oneness between themselves, and they can share all their thoughts, emotions, past lives, experiences, and so on, so they can act as a single organism, and that creates the social memory complex. Then in sixth density, there is the merging of those two densities, fourth and fifth. And these are advanced beings that have created, again, the unification of the experiences in fourth density, love and understanding, and the experiences of fifth density, which is light and wisdom. And they merge them, and now they become more whole and ready to get closer to that part of the top of the octahedron that I explained, which is unity, which is achieved in seventh density. Now, the reason why I'm explaining all of this is because these are beings and entities that exist in all these densities of consciousness. They exist here with us. They are not in a future time as we understand time. They exist all around us because they exist in what's called time-space, which is everywhere. They exist here and in our future as we tend to think about. There is no time actually in our reality, in this cosmos. It only exists here in this illusion. But the point is that all of them are here, and these are the beings that are influencing our planetary sphere towards the positive or the negative. We've talked about the negative beings already. They exist in these densities as well, and their influence is very, very noticeable right now as we see this old system collapse, which was based on manipulation, hierarchy, and so on, as we have explained in Module 1. But the positive beings are also here, and that's what I want to talk about in this video, which is, you have known angels, guardians, ancestors, higher self, interdimensional beings. These are the ones that we're talking about. Most of the extraterrestrials that you hear talk about in the ufology are actually beings from these densities. They're also from third density who have achieved a technological advancement way beyond our understanding right now, probably by the secret space program, if you are familiar with that, in our fake military industrial complex that is hidden there. But that technology is the ones that we know of course, talking about the Confederation of Planets as we know it in the Law of One. We know that they have achieved a different type of technology, which is not physical, but it's conscious. And we can dive into very deep into that, but that's not the purpose of this. The point here is to talk about those entities that are here. Those are our guardians. Those are our angels, as we call them. There are different layers between these densities that exist in the cosmos itself, and those are some of the spirits that are also influencing us towards the positive. They have been here for thousands of years, influencing us. They have given us all types of spiritual beliefs, of ascension, mysteries, teachings. They have interacted with us over thousands of years. And when you review the history of our civilizations, you realize that most of them, if not all of them, have been under the influence of them being here. They have visited us, and they have given us these technologies, these understandings of the cosmos. And that's why we have tribes like Dogons in Africa who knew a lot more than scientists know, actually even now, of the Sirius star system. So they have been coming here and they have been influencing us. But also the negative beings have been influencing us, and they have won over time because of the cycles that we go through. And we're going to touch on this in Module 3, but just to know that these beings have been in constant influence. No battle. There is no actual battle that people think about in our third density mentality, but also just influence of philosophies, and we simply follow them. So humanity has followed a negative philosophy, again, due to the nature of the cycle that we just ended recently, but it's gone away, and now we're more under the influence of positive beings, the influx of wanderers and starseeds, as I talked about in the last video. If you haven't watched that, go watch it. And this is just increasing the vibration of the planet so we can ascend into a 4-density positive planet. So those are our ancestors, those are our angels and guardians. They simply live in another dimension of reality, another density that is invisible to us, but their influence is right here, and their teachings are also available to us. This is something very important for those who seek understanding or communication with their higher self for a progression or an evolution of themselves in here. As I talked about in the last video, inner work is directly related to your higher self. Very important to know that your higher self actually exists in a 6th density consciousness. There is no higher self that is below that. They're all in mid-6th density consciousness. So you know now that your higher self, you yourself, exist in a higher density of reality. So how do we connect to these entities? How do we communicate with them? Well, we have different means. The first one, and the most important one, is probably dreams. Dreams is for those who are into these type of deciphering what the dreams are. Dreams are the conduct by which your higher self communicates with you daily, assuming you sleep every day. And that is the connection that you can have with your higher self to decipher things that happen today and things that will happen tomorrow. And these or actually will happen in the future, or things that have happened in your past lives. You would be surprised of the myriad of experiences you can have in your dreams once you start deciphering them and understanding what they mean, which is a tricky thing to do. And just to vouch for all my higher selves buddies out there, the reason why we actually don't get explicit dreams, like people say, I just want to get a prophecy of what's going to happen in my life, is that would be infringing upon the free will of the entity that is incarnated here. Even if it's yourself, that's cheating. So you can't do that. That's why dreams are so cryptic, but it's up to us to put the work and actually decipher them. So dreams is the first one. The second, then, that it's very well known, is meditation. Meditation is a means by which you actually create an environment of yourself disconnecting from this physical reality, and disconnecting from the ego, from the thoughts, from all the noise that exists in your mind, and simply allow yourself, your higher self, to just channel through you. This is something that, of course, experienced meditators can accomplish and can see. They can distinguish between their thoughts and other thoughts, which is just information being downloaded. But again, that's just another way to communicate through these densities of consciousness. Meditation is a great one, of course. Second one, and probably, the third one, and probably a little bit, I would say, ambiguous, would be the altered state of minds that we achieve through psychedelics, for example. Psychedelics have had a renaissance recently with the past decade, and we know that there's a lot of ceremonies that have been conducted now for people to achieve this altered state of minds and consciousness so they can communicate with other beings. There's a lot of people in the community. If you haven't checked, one of the people that I actually like a lot, who talks about his interaction with higher dimensional beings, is the channel 434. I'll leave a link in the description if you want to check his content. I think it's really good, and it gives you an idea of how people communicate with other, he calls them machine elves, which is a term described by Terence McKenna, who was a psychonaut in the 90s and 80s, very famous. If you don't know about him, you should also check him out. Terence McKenna, great person. But anyhow, that's just the way we communicate with other dimensions. And lastly, I'm going to talk about synchronicities. We've talked about synchronicities in the Law of One series that I have, but I want to mention that synchronicities are a way to interact, actually a way for them to interact with us. Whoever it may be, higher self, angels, guardians, ancestors, you name it. Once we see synchronicities in our lives, you can see that there is a physical interaction with our reality and their reality to give us an idea, a sign, a guide, just a nod sometimes, and other times just a big no. I mean, synchronicities are just wonderful things to get yourself into and just start bathing yourself with the interaction that we have between these two realities. So those things are very, very important. Now, the last thing that I want to talk about in this part, when we talk about the interaction between those outside or inside, whichever way you want to call it, simply around us, invisible to us, and us, is the message that they always give. They all give us the same message, no matter how you see it. From the guy that I just recommended, 434, Peter Hedron, I think is his name, and his communication through psychedelics with interdimensional beings, to Jesus. They all give us the same message. It's loving, understanding, and compassionate behaviors towards others. Even to ourselves, of course. That's the main thing. Remember from part 1 of this module, talk about that, inner work, very important. So that's the message that they always give us. They're all trying to tell us to be more loving, more compassionate, and more understanding of each other, of this planet itself, and to not fall into the traps of division, of hatred, and all those negative emotions or low vibration emotions that we can get into when we're exposed to this very understandable matrix and control system that has been imposed on us, but that we are actually creating, sustaining, and maintaining. So that's something to keep in mind. This puts an end to the second part of this module. We're going to finish it in the next video with where we stand in the universe. What is the catharsis process that we're currently into, and what does it mean? And that's going to lead us into module 3, the ascension of planet Earth. I'll see you in part 3.